Welcome to the Lean Blog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, this is Mark Graban. Welcome to episode 358 of the podcast. It is February 10th, 2020. Returning to the podcast as our guest today is Steve Spear. He is a senior lecturer at MIT. He's the author of the book, The High Velocity Edge, How Market Leaders Leverage Operational Excellence to Beat the Competition. Steve is also the founder and co-creator of a software company and product called C2Solve, among the many other things that he does. Now, he's the author of two outstanding Harvard Business Review articles. We're going to take a look back at these articles here today. The first was Decoding the DNA of the Toyota Production System from 1999. And then the second one, published in 2005, is Fixing Healthcare from the Inside Today. So one of the themes for the episode, beyond the Lean and Toyota content itself, is the evolution of knowledge. I was curious to talk to Steve about this and his articles, but also what does that mean for a company, the idea of evolving our understanding of Lean? What does that mean for an esteemed researcher and professor like Steve? So he was previously a guest in episodes 58, 87, and 262. You can find those in the podcast feed. You can also go to the page for this episode, leanblog.org/358. It'll have links to all of that, links to his articles, his book. I encourage you to check that out. And I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Well, Steve, hi. Thank you for joining us again on the podcast. How's it going?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's always great to talk to you and hear what you're thinking about and working on. It's been a little over 3 years since we've had you on the podcast, and so it's really nice to have you back. I'm sure a lot of the listeners are familiar with you and your work, but turn the floor over to you if you don't mind introducing yourself, a little bit more of some of your background and history.
Oh yeah, sure. So by way of background, where people might know me, I wrote an article back in I think '99, which gets cited and repeated back to me quite a bit, called "Decoding the DNA of the Toyota Production System," and that grew out of an effort to try and explain two things, I suppose. One was, why was it that Toyota was able to get so much more value out of the work it was doing around designing and producing automobiles than anybody else? And the second sort of related question was, given that so much time had been invested in and trying to copy Toyota through the use of lean tools like Kanban, continuous flow, standard work, and that sort of thing, why was it that Toyota was actually widening the lead on its rivals and competitors? And just to put a parenthetical on that, the gaps that motivated so much inquiry about Toyota back in the 80s and into the 90s, they still exist. When I last looked, Toyota's profit per unit sold was something like $2,700. Number two in the world was Ford, and they were one-third that. They were at about $900 per unit sold. General Motors, Chrysler were about $400, $600 per unit sold. They were about a quarter. I mean, the gaps are just staggering. Just one last example, just to kind of whet people's appetite. You take a look at hybridization, combination electric motor and internal combustion engine. So General Motors came up with the Chevy Volt, sold about 160,000 units of that car, and then finally threw up their hands and said, we're moving on to batteries. Toyota, faced with exactly the same challenge to meet the needs of a market which was looking for less smog, more fuel efficiency, they came to market with the Prius 10 years in advance of the Volt. And they didn't stop with the Prius. They took the hybrid system, put it through, 5, 6, 7 evolutions of improvement, but then retuned it, repurposed it onto 24 different platforms. And the sales on the, and again, Toyota is very careful. They don't say sales of Prius. They talk about sales of hybrid. Their sales of hybrid are over 16 million. I mean, the difference in outcome between Toyota Hybrid and Chevy Volt is 100 to 1. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah. It's funny. GM tried to make a Cadillac version of the Volt, which some sort of called Cimarron 2.0. If you remember that history of, we're going to slap a fancier interior
in a Chevy and call it a Cadillac, that sold very low volumes. And like you said, it seemed like GM just gave up.
Yeah, and this is also a little bit of a parenthetical on the self-introduction theme. One of the things that's really a takeaway from Toyota, sort of the big, sort of mega meta takeaway, was how here was a company that had come up as its modus operandi for creating and then sustaining competitive advantage. It was going to do it on the basis of its learning dynamics. That's it. They said, you know what? We all go into the same marketplace, and the person who's faster and better to understand the needs of that marketplace, they got a better starting point. And the person who's better, faster to figure out how to meet those needs, the emphasis on the figuring out because you don't yet know how to meet those needs, to them goes huge spoils. And so you link this back to the Cimarron with the Volt technology inside. Toyota's starting point, and I think General Motors may have missed it on in that particular example, is the very first thing you have to do is lean deeply into the problem space, and in a very empathetic fashion, discover, learn, experiment as to what the real need is you're trying to satisfy on before you offer a product or a service. Yeah. In the case of Toyota, there's some really telling examples. So when they decided that they wanted a presence in the full-size truck market, they said, well, what do we know about full-size trucks? And the answer was very little. We make mid-size trucks and, make Tacomas, and they're all right, but they're not a full-size truck. So the design engineer said, let's go find out what people actually expect from a full-size truck. And there are these really great stories within Toyota about their design team going to NASCAR races and offering people rides in different full-size pickups to say, hey, what do you like, dislike? Going to construction sites, different weather, different environments to say, hey, what do you like? What do you dislike? And that was the information that informed the Tundra. You see a similar sort of immersive approach towards, and again, it all starts with, we don't know what the market really wants, so let's go find out. So the story within Toyota is that when they were trying to really step up their game on minivans, the chief engineer there drove minivans in all of the 50 states to, again, try and figure out what delighted and disappointed people in minivans. And it was his 50,000 miles in 50 different states, which informed the first version of Toyota's minivan. So you get that. And then it just sort of the funny one is that when Toyota first tried to do luxury, they took a predecessor of the Avalon, and kind of like in your GM example, they blinged it up, a lot of chrome and leather and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The sales on it were crummy because the Toyota value proposition is affordable reliability. And this thing was less affordable. And it was like, all right. And if you're looking for a luxury car, you don't go to a Toyota dealer. Yeah. So they said, we really don't know what we're doing here. So let's go find out what we don't know and come to a better understanding, at least of the target first. So the story there is that the design team got, exiled to go live in Beverly Hills for like 6 months. And they shopped at Rodeo Drive. They ate at the Four Seasons, etc. And what they came to appreciate was that luxury was only in part the product. It was a big part of why people paid the prices they did in those different, quote unquote, luxury settings. It wasn't the product so much; it was the service. It was that when you walked in, things were smooth, they were graceful, they were hospitable. There were no glitches, no obstacles. Immediately, someone was trying to understand you, understand your needs, understand your circumstances. And when you look at the Lexus, the business model there is definitely not BMW or Mercedes, because the Lexus doesn't look like any of those things. Mm-hmm. The business model is, hey, we're going to sell an affordable, reliable, slightly fancier car, but the sales and service experience is going to be that of the Four Seasons Hotel. And if you or any of your listeners ever have an opportunity, I encourage you to go in the same day, go to a Toyota dealership and a Lexus dealership. And in both cases, you're going to be treated great, right? I mean, that's my expectation. You go into the Toyota dealership, though, and everything about the place, the lighting, the furniture, the floor treatment, et cetera, is going to say, you've come to a place where it's going to be reliable but affordable. And when you go to go have the same experience, sales or service at the Lexus dealer, the experience you're going to have there is we're going to treat you really well. Yeah. So come in, relax, kick back. We're going to treat you really well today. Anyway,
and there's different dimensions of of quality. I mean, I think like in terms of like hotels, the difference between a Hilton Garden Inn and a Ritz-Carlton, like you can get a good night's sleep in both hotels.
Right.
And, they can be, good at what they are and what they promise, but I certainly wouldn't expect, I don't think I've ever stayed in a Ritz-Carlton, but I wouldn't expect that level of service at a Hilton, a regular Hilton even.
Right. Yeah, and that's right, because you go to the places that, the brands we associate with, I'm traveling on business, I just want to get a good night's sleep and I don't want to pay too much for it. You go and you expect a certain level of comfort, a certain level of cleanliness, hospitality, but you don't expect frills. And in fact, the frills would really be distracting because you'd say, why am I paying for frills? I'm going to be in this hotel for all of 8 hours. Now, there are other places you go where when you walk in the door, you want someone to say, and this is the Four Seasons experience, so they walk in and say, hey, Mark, welcome back. We noticed that you used a lot of towels because, we have this great shower and spa-like bathtub. So we put extra towels in your room. Or we noticed you ran out of coffee. So guess what? We stocked up a couple extra capsules for the Keurig machine in your room. A couple extra mints on the pillow because we noticed, by the chocolate wrappers in the trash. And that became the model for Lexus. So that when you go to the Lexus dealer, it's efficient, it's effective, but it's a little bit more. When you walk in, you actually sit down in an office rather than go to a kiosk to check in. Hey, how you doing? What's been going on the last 6 months since your last tune-up? How's the kids? How's the family? Anything going on we should know about in terms of it might have changed your driving habits that we should look at the car? And again, tying that all back, all interesting stories, but I think they reveal a really critical point is that Toyota built a business model and a management system which starts with the assumption that we don't know what we need to do and we don't know how to do it. And so the very first thing we have to do, and then what we then have to do continuously, is go figure out what to do and how to do it and constantly learn and, by everyone all the time. And so you take a look at, Tundra, Sienna, Lexus, et cetera, what you're really seeing is an expression of that sort of optimistic humility that, we don't know what's going on, and geez, how to build a car. Gosh, that's a huge mystery to us. But that's the humility part. But the optimism is, but really, really energetic, diligent, enthusiastic about this learning thing. Good God, what can we accomplish? And what they've accomplished is really remarkable.
Well, and so you kind of bring up, this question of, you call it learning dynamics, and this difference between going into the development of a new product or service or a startup or even an improvement project in a hospital. There's a big difference between knowing the answer and then moving forward versus this idea of, well, we're going to figure it out. And maybe we have frameworks for figuring that out, whether that's the Toyota product development system or the lean startup methodology or A3 problem solving. These can be frameworks for learning and figuring it out. That's one of the key differences with companies like Toyota, right?
Right. That's right. So what you mentioned is you went through a list of some very effective tools appropriate for one circumstance or another. Common to all of them is that they guide you in the direction of first starting with the question: what is it I don't know about the situation? Mm-hmm. Then, further the question for, well, what can I capture about the situation? The current condition, what's not working in the situation, so going back to the A3 metaphor, what's the, in the current condition, not only what is happening, but what's happening that's disappointing. And then leading on to the next question. And you see, it's all questions, right? Which is what's going on? What's wrong with what's going on? And the root cause, which is why is it going on or going on in a bad way? And again, that's, I don't know for sure, but this is my best guess, my best informed guess. And then another question, which is, given what's going on, right and wrong, and the reasons I think it's going wrong, a question: what can I do differently? Corrective action, countermeasures, and then another set of questions, which is, given how things are currently operating, and why I think they're operating that way, the root cause analysis, and what I think are reasonable changes. What do I think is going to happen when I put those changes in place? Boom, target condition. And so you see built into these methods is sort of little prods, nudges, little assists to help the person using these tools constantly ask questions so they get to a better recognition of what they can't answer, and also get to better answers through this active questioning experience.
But I'm curious your experience working with organizations that are not Toyota or not the U.S. Nuclear Navy or other organizations that you've written about. If somebody is trying to, they say, like, we want to be the Toyota of whatever industry.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like there's this habit, or like people are really comfortable with, or they feel this need to want to know things, or at least to pretend like we know things, versus along with a discomfort of saying, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Discomfort with uncertainty.
Right.
What are some thoughts about trying to change that mindset or habit?
Yeah. So I'll use your question and just sort of follow up a little bit in terms of the personal history, because the question about organizations not Toyota outside of autos. So just quick reference for folks who haven't seen the materials. So we talked about healthcare organizations which were trying to become the Toyota of their sector in an article called "Fixing Healthcare from the Inside," and it's not recent, but more recent than the DNA article.
It was about 2005, right? Or was the Fixing article, right?
Yeah, probably 2000. Yeah, 2005.
Well,
and then my book. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but the title, it also includes a comma, today, Fixing Healthcare from the Inside today.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. And what we're trying to emphasize there is that, well, sometimes there are these large structural things that are either time-consuming to understand or time-consuming to remediate. That doesn't mean you can't start right now.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties back to what we've been discussing, Mark, which is the basic premise here, which is we enter situations, and particularly complex dynamic situations, handicapped by what we don't know. And if we enter those situations, again, not knowing about what to do nor how to do it, there's no reason we can't start right now coming to a better understanding. We don't have to wait for the assembly of a blue ribbon commission, appointed by the governor or the president. We can, could look around, left, right, up, down, 10 feet. I'm already swamped with things I simply do not understand. So, hence the comment with the emphasis today. You don't have to wait.
Yeah. And there's, I think, and when you wrote the article, this is really before the major healthcare reform efforts, during the Obama administration.
Right.
And, there's this question of, are we expecting the big systemic change, and what is that? And if it's coming, to your point, what could we do today, right now?
Yeah. And that's right on. Because if you think about it, you put yourself in 2005. So that's some context. So around 2000, Institute of Medicine had published these reports which were saying just how hazardous healthcare delivery was to patients and actually care providers too. And so after that, you can imagine people with a policy orientation were saying, oh, well, what can be done in Washington or Albany or Boston or wherever else, Austin, to fix that? And that leads in the direction of, oh, woe is me, there's nothing I can do. And fortunately, there were a handful of people, different places. I spent a lot of time with folks in Pittsburgh, but Appleton, Wisconsin, out in Seattle, and elsewhere, Cleveland, Cincinnati, who said, well, what the hell, if we're going to wait on Congress to get anything done, it'll be our grandchildren. And so I said, well, let's get started today. And, I think what we demonstrated pretty solidly, both with the, our own work on which we reported, but also documenting what other people had done, is that even in sort of this dysfunctional, I don't know, I think we insult the term system to call it a system, but within this dysfunctional vertical that's American healthcare and American healthcare payments, you could still make huge improvements. I mean, we had examples where people took these horrible complications and, like surgical site infection, and eliminated them, just down to zero. Come to my hospital, have surgery. Don't worry about the MRSA. Ventilator associated pneumonia, gone. Central line infection, gone. And it wasn't as if, then you get the pushback. Well, what's the cost of quality? And the answer is
right.
Quality is wickedly free. It actually pays for itself. And, one of the guys we worked with, he's now at Duke, this guy, Rick Shannon, he wrote up, they had gotten rid of central line infections, ventilator pneumonia, and a bunch of really horrible other things. They wrote it up and said, damn, we're making a whole lot more money doing this because, having someone readmitted costs a lot of money onto the system. Having someone extended day of care where we're not doing anything procedural, huge cost on the system. Then, if we can actually come and treat someone and get them on their way in a well-conditioned state, everyone's better off.
Eliminating MRSA is not a Lexus or Ritz-Carlton level of service. That should be just built into any product. Like you would expect your Toyota Corolla is not going to just randomly explode as you're driving down the street.
Yeah. The wheels should stay on, in the first 50,000 miles of driving. That's right. They should not come off the rims. Right. Yeah. So, you asked about, examples outside of auto. So, then when I wrote the High Velocity Edge, I think about 2010, we looked at other examples, and that book is a book, not an article. We had lots of opportunity to really dig into the culture, behavior, norms, beliefs inside of Toyota. Really, I think coming to a much richer appreciation of the learning dynamic and its points of emphasis. But we had examples in there of Pratt and Whitney saying, "Damn, we keep losing these really expensive contests." For the right to put our jet engine on someone else's airplane. And it was really quite a Toyota-like appreciation. The folks at Pratt & Whitney, they said, why is it we keep losing these contests? And, they barreled through the technical reason and the organizational reason. That, why we keep losing? Because that's all we know how to do. We don't know how to win. And the reason we don't know how to win is that the approach we're taking is inadequate to get a winning jet engine. And so what they did is they said, let's take this approach to learning and throw it onto the process by which you design a jet engine, which is many years, billions of dollars, thousands of engineers. And wouldn't you know, they ran that program with a huge amount of constant feedback. Yo, engineer, this is what you don't know. Yo, program manager, this is what you don't know. This is what you don't understand. And then, linking that back to our A3 problem solving, every time one of those problems popped up, they said, we're not going to work through, we're not going to work around, we're not going to just sort of muscle on. Let's ask the question, why do we have that problem? And then once we understand why we had that problem or have a belief as to why we have that problem, let's make a change to our approach. Anyway, long and short, what happens with Pratt, they take a process which they thought it would take 4 years to design a jet engine, and they got it done in 3. And they looked at the history in terms of engineering change orders as they go through they cut that in half. And wouldn't you know, I say this with gigantic air quotes, but the simple act of acknowledging that they didn't know how to design a jet engine well, but they could learn their way to the right answer about how to do that. They ended up winning the contract for the F-35 Lightning II. And just off the top of my head, that's like $10 million an engine, 3,500 engines. That's a $35 billion swing in fortune. And that doesn't even include service parts and maintenance. I mean, so profound fortune shifting for a company, which all it did, again, with air quotes, all it did was say, we only know how to fail. We don't know how to succeed. So if we want to succeed, we've got to learn a whole lot more than we currently know.
And that shift to learning, different than, organization may have just blamed somebody every time there was a failure instead of thinking about systemic failures. And I'm just thinking back to, just got this vivid memory of just going to share a quick story. The last manufacturing company that I worked for was Honeywell. And in the one business unit, my cubicle, I was out on the shop floor most of the time, but I had a cubicle, and it was near the woman who was the executive assistant to one of the vice presidents. And I had heard that one of the sub business units had replaced its president, and there was an announcement coming, and the admin was talking on the phone, probably to another admin. And I hadn't been there that long, and I heard her say, and she said, they keep replacing presidents every year, and maybe one of them's going to figure it out. And like, but the problem might not be any of those people who would, high potential people who were then apparently promoted or moved into this place that was like a death sentence for your career.
Right.
Who would take
That's
that job
right.
next? But anyway,
Yeah.
it's interesting, that blame dynamic is really ingrained in a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations as well. And that's got to just interfere with learning then.
Exactly. And it's wild because the person who's next up, the guy or gal who's firing those presidents on like this 12, 24-month tack time, right? They're not thinking like, maybe I'm taking someone who's been really successful and putting them in a completely corrosive environment. Maybe I own some of the responsibility for that corrosiveness. Like, no. It's just, yeah. But, actually, Mark, it really reflects on something really sort of discouraging. Right. So whoever is making those 12, 24-month assignments, they're getting pretty good feedback that there's something wrong with their process. Right. Because they, hey, that guy's really doing great. Let's put him in that job. Oh, he sucks. Oh, that gal's doing really great. Let's put her in that job. Oh, she sucks too. It's like after 2-3 times through this, don't you say, what the hell am I doing wrong?
This comes back even if at a more micro level, looking
right.
at a control chart and statistical process control and the voice of the process, the process is talking to you. It doesn't
right.
mean someone's going to listen.
Right. Yeah. One of the things I try to say is that no matter what our hopes, expectations, predictions, no matter what those are, reality gets the final veto. And we then have a choice, right? Which is, do we respect the veto and ask why the universe? I mean, you think about it, the universe is 15 billion years old and fairly infinite in size, right? So in a contest between what Steve and Mark think and the universe, and if the universe disagrees, who should we listen to, right? I'm thinking the universe here, right? But what often happens is, no, I'll try it again. It's like, why? The universe just told you don't understand.
Yeah, but it might take a while for the universe to win. So we still hold out hope that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I know. 15 billion years. I mean, it's got it's got patience. It's going to keep winning.
Yeah.
So,
well, so if it's okay, I want to kind of bring things back to one topic we were going to explore today. You mentioned the decoding the DNA of the Toyota Production System article from 20 years ago, and
right.
like you said, it's still very often mentioned and cited and and used. One of the frameworks from the article, just recap for the listeners if they're not familiar with the articles, the 4 rules, or what are sometimes called
right.
the rules in use from the Decoding the DNA article. And then Fixing Healthcare from the Inside Today has another framework. You talk about 4 capabilities, 4
right.
organizational capabilities. And so one thing I wanted to explore today is kind of your thoughts on how research, knowledge evolves or changes, or I think you used the phrase talking about being on the frontier of knowledge.
Right.
I was wondering if you could talk about that. So a difference in 6 years between the articles, kind of just your thoughts on that continued learning, where if it wasn't a continuous learning dynamic for you, you'd say like, nope, nailed it. This is a great article. It's best selling. People love it. I'm done. But that's not
right.
how you operate, right?
Right. So let me just offer this, is that I don't know if it's a universal principle, but certainly a good general one. All progress is incremental. And just to sort of anchor people on this, back in 1961, President Kennedy said something about sending a man to the moon by the end of the, and returning him safely to Earth by the end of the decade. And that was actually accomplished, right, with Apollo 11. But the first manned flight of the human space, of the American manned space program was Alan. Armstrong, Shepard, right? What did he do? He took off.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, Alan Shepard, right? So Alan Shepard, what did he actually accomplish in terms of getting the moon and coming back safely by the end of the decade? Well, he beat the end of the decade thing, but he took off and he landed 18 minutes later. That was it. That was important because until Alan Shepard took off and landed, it wasn't clear that the United States had the capability to have a man safely leave the Earth at very high velocity with all his forces and whatnot, and come back safely without splattering. And it wasn't until 2 flights later where John Glenn went up and he went around the Earth 3 times. Again, you start thinking the distances involved, right? They're minuscule compared to getting to the moon and coming back. But it was necessary to establish one level of threshold and stability to then use that as the platform for the second and the third flight in the Gemini program, the Gemini program into the Mercury program into the Gemini program, and then the Gemini is the basis into Apollo. Now, the other thing I just want to emphasize in terms of this incrementalism. So there was a movie, I think it was Ryan Gosling last year called First Man. And, it sort of dramatized the crew of Apollo 11. Sort of gives you a hint about incrementalism, right? It wasn't Apollo 1, it was Apollo 11. Actually leaving the Earth, orbiting, rendezvousing with their spaceship, making it to the moon, orbiting, boom, boom, right? And they get back, and since that's the summer of 1969, they beat the president's deadline of within a decade. And he started asking people, well, what was the big accomplishment of Buzz Aldrin and Alan Shepard, Neil Armstrong? And people say, oh, well, they went to, but you start looking at it. Yeah, they as 2 people went to the moon, landed, took off, and returned to Earth. But what did they do that was new? And most people say, oh, but they were the first people to go on the moon. And it's like, yeah, sort of. Because the crew of Apollo 10 did everything almost, right? They launched from Florida. They orbited. They got themselves organized. They headed off in the direction of the moon. They orbited there. They started the descent to the moon. And they got within 47,000 feet of the surface of the moon. And you just put that in some perspective. For people who travel, coast to coast, you're flying almost as high as they were off the surface of the moon. At 47,000 feet, they knew if they sort of said, hey, what the hell, we're here already, let's go to the moon and back.
So close. Yeah.
They had been told that there wasn't enough fuel to get back home, right? So there's a very strong sort of carrot stick thing going on with the folks at NASA around this, but they got within 47,000 feet of landing. So then when you look at, that's Apollo 10. Now, when you look at Apollo 11 and say, what did those guys do that was new? The answer is 47,000 feet down, walk around a little bit, and 47,000 feet back up. And I'm saying that sarcastically, not to diminish what they did, but to make the point is that accomplishment is incremental. And I defy anyone to find a giant accomplishment that wasn't anything but incremental. But anyway, tying that back to the research question. So, we were curious, what the heck is Toyota doing that all these other people trying to copy Toyota are missing? And I did this sort of very deep, immersive Karate Kid-like deep dive into Toyota and in the operating environment. And I was able to come out of that and say, oh my gosh, look at this. They've converted all their workflows into feedback generating experiments. And I think we use the term in the article, community of scientists. And so of those rules in use, because they're not rules written on a wall or like, tablets of the 10 commandments in a courtroom, right? We said, look, they're very, very deliberate about how they predict the flow of work. They're very deliberate about predicting, pre-specifying exchanges in the flow of work. And they're very disciplined about predicting, defining, pre-specifying the actual approach of design, conducting a task. So when they do any of those things, they get feedback. So those rules 1, 2, and 3. Then the fourth rule was, we said, you know what, this whole experimentation thing, when they have a problem, they actually solve the problem as an experiment too. Right? Boom. That's what we got in 1999. Now we kept looking at Toyota and said, well, does that explain everything? And it explains some of it, and sort of like the Mercury program explained how you take off, orbit, and land. And the Gemini program explained how you take off, orbit, and do sort of complex things on long duration flights and land. The article was an increment in terms of understanding. But what it didn't explain, what we came to really appreciate as we continued interacting with Toyota and then trying to apply the lessons elsewhere, was that we were missing big parts of the management system. So so we had captured, I'd say, 75, 80% how you design an operating system so it gives you feedback. Great. That was rules 1, 2, and 3. We captured, I'd say 75, 80% how you make an improvement so it's actually a bona fide feedback generating experiment. But one of the things we didn't capture at all in the article was, let's say you learn something. How do I benefit from it? And so when we started talking about these capabilities, which appeared first in the healthcare article, later in the book, we were able to add increments and say, well, here's what you do there. Here's how you take a local lesson and systematize it. So that became capability 3. If capability 1 was how you design a system for feedback, and capability 2 was how you solve problems with feedback. Capability 3 was how you take that feedback and make it systemic. And then, the other increment was which we had a lot more time to observe how Toyota leaders cultivated, nurtured, sustained this continuous learning, continuous experimentation culture. And so that became the 4th capability. So anyway, back to, the question about advancing the understanding. It's like, look, I think the basic premise, you and I have talked about a lot is anytime you're in a situation, your understanding of it is imperfect. So what you do is you try to grab your best understanding, say, all right, well, that's what I think I know. Now, what is it I don't know and how can I advance it? So, the 99 article was, best first attempt. And then we try to build on it since then.
So, I mean, you talk about the evolution. I think that happens with any of us, myself included, in our careers. As we get exposed to Lean or the Toyota production system in different ways in the workplace, and we may have a mentor or somebody who's educating us and we think we get it. And then we learn, okay, no, we don't understand as well. Through practice, there's feedback that we get that hopefully we listen to, we get exposed to others. I think there's a parallel in how anyone's understanding might evolve from, thinking about a few Lean tools, some management practices, more about the culture and the philosophy. You feel like your understanding, hopefully evolves and doesn't just get stuck in, well, here's what I learned in my first class and I'm certified or belted and I know it.
Right.
As opposed to, I'm just starting to figure it out.
Right.
And I think back even over history of the Lean movement, if you will, like, I'd be curious your thoughts on this, of course. Like there was that first wave or, like the language that was used. There's a book called Japanese Manufacturing Techniques, which is one of the early books. And then there were a lot of books or, people would frame it as just-in-time manufacturing. Like the Wall Street Journal today, poke at them sometimes. Their understanding somehow hasn't evolved. They still refer to anything Toyota-ish as just-in-time. And there, so there was this kind of subset understanding of Lean. And then, I think there was a phase where, well, it's about a broader set of tools. It's not just about just in time. And then people start realizing, well, it's also about how we manage, and it's also about problem solving, and it's also about culture and coach. So, I mean, I think the Lean movement, for what that is, has evolved and grown over time. I guess that's just how things work. If you want to call Lean a field or a discipline, it works that way in other fields. You talked about rocketry as an example, right?
Yeah, and I think what I would do, first of all, I agree wholeheartedly with your point, is that there's this evolution. One of the things that I don't have a point of view on this, but what we might want to do is think a little bit about the term we actually use to describe the process, because evolution implies, Darwinian, variation, selection, retention, but also implied in that is discarding that, these traits, these features were valuable, and then we discard them. And that's true, right? Because there's a lot of things that as our learning advances, there are certain practices we discard. I mean, I'm looking out my window now. I don't see anyone on a horse. there goes an Uber, and there goes one of those electric rentable scooters, but no horses out my window today. So discarding does occur. But I would say the thing we often forget, and this ties back to the incrementalism, is that our understanding today didn't displace our understanding yesterday. It added to it. Mm-hmm. That yesterday there were certain things I knew, and I had a certain confidence and clarity, and there was a range of application. And hopefully I learned something between yesterday and today. And I've got better clarity, better certainty, better range in application. It's not like the stuff yesterday was I'm discarding. I'm just understanding it better. And the reason I bring that up, and I don't want to become like a semantics fanatic on this one, is that this idea of incrementalism. And Alan Shepard had to take an 18-minute flight because that's all we were able to do in 1961. And if he hadn't taken that flight in 1961, only, quote unquote, air quotes again, only 18 minutes, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin would never have landed in 1969. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that the small wins are wins. And in fact, the small wins are the bottleneck step onto the next small win, onto the next one and the next one. And if we didn't build up a record of small wins, we never have the giant leap of accomplishment.
So I was wondering if we could explore a little bit more. You talked about going into Toyota. You joked about your Karate Kid experiences. You had more than one Mr. Miyagi, if you will,
right?
Trying to help. I'm just curious to kind of explore a little bit of the process of having people explain what might be, if you use the analogy, you're asking the fish to describe the water that they're in. And like you said, it's not like these rules were just posted on the wall, that there was a process of understanding, drawing out, synthesizing. This is going back a ways now, but I'm curious if you kind of share memories or reflections of how that came to be. Were there drafts of the rules in use, and feedback cycles around, okay, is this?
Yeah. So the fish water thing's interesting, right? Because the folks at Toyota, the way they taught this really was Karate Kid kind of thing. I mean, when I went in there, sort of like I was going native, right? So day one, I'm like, oh, excited. I'm going to learn the Toyota production system. It's like learning the Force from Yoda. And I really thought that, if you think about the time frame, Yoda was really a relevant metaphor. And grown Yoda, not baby Yoda. And I get there the first day, and the guy who was my Yoda, I said, all right, I'm here to learn. And he says, all right, go find out what the factory makes. I said, what? He said, yeah, go find out what the factory makes. And so I go in, and I come back at the end of the day and I said, hey, Mr. Yoda, here's what I think they make. And he says, well, how'd you find that out? I said, well, I asked people. I said, what do you make? And all he said was, do you trust them? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, how do you know they're right? And I had no answer to that. And then he left. And so day two, I had to go back again. And I come in with a different list, which this time I went to the accounting office. And he said, how'd you get that list? He said, what's that from? I said, well, they seem to be trustworthy, honest people. I think, it's the Midwest. It's not, it's not one of the urban centers on the East Coast or the West Coast, right? These are trustworthy people. Just anyone listening who thinks I was joking. I'm a native New Yorker and live in Boston, right? So that's self-deprecating. And he said, where's this list from? I said, the accounting department. I said, look for what they invoiced. He said, well, are you sure they made that? Anyway, the reason I bring that up is I got very little explicit direction, or say, oh, this is the Toyota production system. And anytime they did say, this is the Toyota production system, it was like they were talking tongues about basic thinking and inner motivation. And then like, what is it, a yoga class? The way they teach it is this very experiential approach. Now, the advantage I had is that that wasn't my own set of experiences, right? So I could go elsewhere and make contrasts. That's one form of experimentation, right? Which is just sort of inductive. Look at A, look at B, see how they differ in performance, and ask how do they differ in behavior. So that was one thing. And you sort of start writing that up. and you say, "Oh, I'm developing a theory." And the other part is deductive experimentation, where you say, "I have a theory, and I'm going to go test it out, see how well it works." And when it works, it's like, "Yay, I wasn't wrong." And when it doesn't work, you say, "Yay, I have a chance to improve my understanding," right? But anyway, I think the advantage I had versus the typical person at Toyota is I was there as a social scientist, but as a scientist. And anyway, actually, it's a good parenthetical here. Taking this research in a very, very scientific fashion, I owe credit to two mentors. So one is Kent Bowen, who I met at MIT before I went over to Harvard to do this research. And the guy is like an uber genius on ceramics. So the fact that he was encouraging me to do social science with the disciplines he had acquired as a laboratory scientist, not surprising. The other one that I think it's timely to mention is that Clay Christensen, father of disruptive innovation, passed away this past week.
Right.
And Clay was hugely influential, not only in my thinking, but my approach. Because Clay was really thinking really, really hard about theory of theories. What's the theory by which you can construct meaningful theories? And so this whole notion of making rigorous observation and then describing what I saw and seeing how things classified and characterized, and see if out of that can I extract some hypothetical causality. And that was hugely influenced by Clay's heavy but caring hand on my shoulder, and then flipping it around to sort of the deductive test of theory that also reflected strongly influenced this guy Kent Bowen and also Clay Christensen. So anyway, I just want to take opportunity to shout out that I would be nothing at all without their and I say that a little sarcastically, but it's actually quite true. My professional career would be wildly different, and I think far worse without the influence they exerted in terms of the sense making. That was my experience with Toyota and elsewhere.
Well, and thank you for sharing that and for the shout out. I just a quick aside, when I was at Sloan as an MBA student from 97 to 99, we were exposed to Christensen's work. And I think what year was the Innovator's Dilemma published? I think it was right around that time frame.
Right around that time. Yeah.
So he was still, I think in certain circles, a bit of a cult hero, and then he hit, mainstream recognition, Silicon Valley and beyond. So I was very fortunate to be exposed to that kind of thinking. And, just another parenthetical within the parenthetical, I did my LGO internship. I don't know if you know this, Steve, at Kodak.
Oh,
1998, Kodak. Imagine putting yourself there at that place in that time. And They were still very much in a state of denial about digital imaging.
Right.
At that point. And when I'll try to close the parentheses at the end, but they had, I remember an executive, it wasn't Fisher, the CEO at the time, but somebody very high up at a strategic level, giving a talk to a group and with a straight face saying, because of the spread of digital imaging, we are going to sell more film and more paper. I'm like, what? Like, what do you think? Like, digital cameras were either just a really crappy toy, or I was in the area that was making the really high power digital cameras that like Sports Illustrated photographers were using.
Right.
Cameras were either really amazing and really expensive, or really cheap, or relatively cheap and really crappy. And I'm thinking, like, do they believe this, or is this just the story they're trying to tell Wall Street? The universe has not caught up to them yet, But the argument was, well, when people get exposed to digital photography, they will eventually move up to real photography, which they defined as paper and film.
Right.
But a lot of this seems like textbook Innovator's Dilemma kind of situation, where they didn't view digital photography as a real threat.
Yes. So I wrote something to a friend of Clay's to, thinking through what Clay's, if you really had to boil Clay's contribution down, and it ties so solidly into what we're discussing about having this open-mindedness to learning. But if you look at Clay's thing about disruptive innovation, he said, all of us want to get good enough that we can say, hey, man, I'm in a groove right now. Absolutely. I mean, who doesn't want to be in a groove, and be really good at what you do? And he says there's a risk to that, right? And this is the disruptors and what you're describing with Kodak, which is once you're in a groove, the groove can become a rut. And once you're in a rut, you stop looking as to what's wrong with the groove or the rut you're in, and you stop looking around yourself. And Clay's advice really is, I think, far more than a corporate advice. He says, once you find yourself really good at something, look around and come to an appreciation of who else is out there whose needs in the moment aren't being even recognized, let alone satisfied. And if you can see that, and it's going to be hard to see because you're in a groove and you're focused really, really hard on the needs you're already meeting and satisfying. But if you can look outside of your groove and come to appreciate those who aren't even seen right now and orient at least part of your activity to their needs, you might accomplish great things. Mm-hmm. Now, that really is the essence of kind of the disruptive, the innovator's dilemma and the innovator's solution, right? Which is, you're in a groove and you're chasing this high-end products, blah, blah, blah. But what the hell? Go set up an independent standalone team and let them explore for you. But as a life philosophy, and I think Clay modeled it, is that it's not a bad life philosophy to have also, which is, hey, I'm in a groove. I got, what my family, professional, economic situation is. Hey, I'm really grooving along. But, take a look down take a look out your window across the street down the road and say, yeah, but while you're in your groove, is there somebody else who's not? And can you lend a hand? So anyway, I think there's a lot that we could learn from Clay, whether it's, like you said, the late 90s when he was just entering people's consciousness or even now. And
he wrote a book later, about 10 years later, called The Innovator's Prescription about healthcare. And I just want to connect dots back to, the progression of your articles and then your book, decoding the DNA of the Toyota Production System, some of the general principles for people in almost any workplace. And then the Fixing Healthcare from the Inside Today article. I mean, in a way, that has lessons. It's not just about fixing healthcare; it's about fixing organizations. And I guess is that then part of what led to the book, The High Velocity Edge? Not just having a longer book instead of an article, but kind of drawing lessons back out more broadly. I hope people outside of healthcare who are listening would go read the Fixing Healthcare from the Inside Today article, because there's a lot of great lessons there. Maybe those lessons weren't getting to people because it on the surface looks like a healthcare article. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that could be. Look, back to our notion of evolution, incrementalism, layering. We went into Toyota and had these really wonderful insights about how you create processes that offer feedback. And because they offer feedback, they create the opportunity for improvement. And then when we had this marvelous opportunity to vector into the Pittsburgh health community, we started to try to put those, again, it's good science, like Kent Bowen and Clay Christensen were encouraging. It's good science. You've got some ideas, go test them out and find out what you don't know. And, it was in the healthcare community there that we said, there's really this huge leadership element, which is depending on how senior leaders act, it really has a profound effect on how well some of this other stuff gets picked up. And so it was experiences in that community where we really had an opportunity to start building out the model from just not the design of the operations to the problem solving, the knowledge sharing, and the leadership posture. And then once we had gotten that in the healthcare community, then the next science question is, you have kind of your, and I'm paraphrasing on the Einstein thing, making no other comparison there, right? But, all right, fine. You have your special theory, but is there a general theory here? Einstein, special and general relativity.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, well, let's go test this elsewhere and see if we can observe it elsewhere. And what we found is actually there was a general theory of management where the power, the strength, the duration, the speed of the learning dynamic was the source of competitive advantage. And it was, I do encourage people to take a look at the healthcare article because it's short and colorful, but then take a look at the book to say, how do you take the special, those vertical specific examples, how do they apply more generally?
And then there's that difference, and the book gets into this, describing a Toyota and making progress toward becoming more Toyota-ish, or however somebody would want to frame that. And I know some people who left Toyota and then have struggled, and they've shared, someone I know who gave a presentation at a conference, Jess Orr, who I appreciate her vulnerability and humility to talk about. It's one thing to work at Toyota for, I don't know, it was 5 years or something like that, and then to go in and try to help somebody move in that direction is a challenge and a real growth opportunity for her. And I admire that she's in that, well, we're going to figure it out mindset, as opposed to being viewed, there's the risk of like, well, you're the expert, we hired you to fix us, which is, it seems like a very non-Toyota way. I'm not saying her organization did that, but in that a lot, and you've probably run across it, the expert.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's a great bracket on the conversation, right? Because she said, become the Toyota of my vertical. And I think what happened was a lot of people thought that becoming the Toyota of my vertical meant having just-in-time pull systems, low inventory, low cost, etc. And they thought those were sort of the independent variables. Oh, get rid of middle management, get rid of inventory, etc. And I don't think there was a full enough appreciation that those performance variables, those are the dependent variables. The consequence of being an organization capable of learning so much so fast for so long meant that you could run an organization with very low inventories, far fewer people, more productive, far more responsive. So this, crazy combination of resilience plus agility. Not because you wake up one day and say, "Oh, Mark, let's decide we're going to be a resilient, agile organization." You can't do that. What you can do is, "Hey, Mark, let's decide that what we're going to do to be the Toyota of our vertical is we're going to learn a ton. We're going to go into work today and say, what is it we don't know, and try and leave saying, here's what we've learned that we didn't know this morning." And if we do that, and we start doing that every day, and we do it faster and faster, and we get more people to do that, that's being the Toyota of our vertical. Mm. And then what the result will be, just our ability to deliver incredible levels of value in a resilient, agile way to the marketplace. But to be the Toyota of our vertical means that we're very, very energetic in discovering what we don't know, seeing problems. We call that the first capability in the book. How do we manage ourselves so we see problems? And when we see a problem, how do we solve those problems also very energetically so that we have something to share? That became the third capability.
And as we wrap up here, maybe I'll propose as an exercise, and I'll be the first to take this on myself. It's interesting that you frame it, Steve, as let's list out the things we don't know, where again, I think there's that habit and comfort in anchoring ourselves in the things we do know, whether it's from education or experience or what have you.
Yeah. So let me offer the folks listening to this some homework. So it's kind of a self-diagnostic. We've actually done this, is, for whomever you're responsible, it's not like you're in charge. It's kind of, but you're responsible. Your job is to make sure that they can do their job. End of the day, just in a very friendly kind of way. Say, yo, Mary, Sue, Bobby, Billy, whomever. Hey, just before you go, I just want to check in. How was your day? And see what the answer you get. Now, let me give this a very particular example on this. Is that we did just such a test with people queuing up for a shuttle bus to the train. And we went out there and said, hey, how was your day? What'd you get done? And the answers were, well, I'm glad you asked. I synthesized this many different compounds. I ran this number of different tests. From those tests, I generated this number of reports. We're setting up a new data system. I wrote this much code today. Now, we did this, and it was everyone gave an answer which was literally their physical productivity, or metaphorically their physical productivity. And the guy I was doing this with was running a very large research facility. So, we stepped back, looked at this gigantic building with hundreds of employees in it. We said, why does this building exist? To make stuff? And the answer was no, because in commercial pharmaceuticals, to have a commercial product, you have to produce it in the megagram volume. In this facility, they were making things for testing in the microgram. It's a 10 to the 12th order of magnitude difference. It doesn't exist to make anything. The whole facility exists to discover stuff. And yet when we went up and down this queue for people getting on the shuttle bus, and you ask people, what'd you accomplish today? Not a single person. And again, let's put this in context again. Not only is the facility existing to do really early stage R&D, everyone on that line has at least one PhD in a natural science. And when you ask people with PhDs in natural sciences who are making things at the microgram level, what they accomplished, they'll say how many micrograms they created and not what they discovered that day. And he was like, oh my, and he just put his hands in his head and, figuratively started to sob, because that's not why they showed up 8 o'clock that morning. They showed up 8 o'clock that morning carrying in things that no one in the world knew, and hopefully leaving at 5 o'clock in the evening, having answered at least some questions, and not a single one defined. So anyway, back to the homework, is that no matter what work any of the listeners are supporting, part of that work, people already know what to do and how to do it. But a big portion of that work, they don't. They don't know what to do, and they don't know how to do it. And just do the test. Today's Friday. We're recording this, and I don't know when people listen to it. Whatever the equivalent, the workday equivalent is of tomorrow. Whatever tomorrow is, tomorrow, end of day. Go ask people, hey, goodbye. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for your effort. Thanks for what'd you get done today? And I'm willing to bet no one says, oh man, I'm so glad you asked me that question, because my answer is I learned something. Yeah. I'm willing to bet no one gets that answer back. And as the day after tomorrow, make sure you start the day with the question, hey, before we get started, what is it we don't know? And so at the end of the day, we can have a conversation about what we learned. And if you could do that every day, what is it we don't know at the start of the day, at the start of the shift? And make sure you loop back at the end of the day. Hey, what did we learn about that really hard problem? You're at least starting on track to being the Toyota of your vertical.
Well, that seems like a great note to end things on, to use as a bit of a musical analogy. But Steve, thank you so much for sharing the time and sharing your thoughts and having the conversation. I'll think back, what did I learn today? And this will be part of that. If people want to learn more about not just your articles, but the work and the things that you do, can you tell the listeners you've got a website? What's that address these days?
Oh, yeah. So if anyone wants further information, the most current website we have now is kind of the principles we've been talking about. See a problem to solve it. So the website is C2Solve, SEETOSOLVE.com. Go there, and we got some links to articles and some other stuff we've been up to. But start there, and certainly if you've got questions, get in touch.
Great. I'll encourage everyone to go check that out and to go check out the articles and the book, The High Velocity Edge. So again, our guest today has been Steve Spear. Steve, thanks a lot, and hopefully we can do another one of these without our tack time shorter than 3.5 years.
Yeah, let's tell it a year, no more. Sure. No. But anyway, next couple of weeks, next couple of months would be. There's a lot more to discuss because, Mark, you think about what's really fundamental. What we're talking about is how do you manage an organization so that every day people can tap into and better express more and more of their innate potential to be creative. And it strikes me that that's a conversation that shouldn't lapse. That should be just the ongoing conversation.
Well, and thank you for that conversation. Thank you for responding to my pull signal to talk again and to do a podcast here. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thanks for asking.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Lean Blog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.